Hello. I am a former flight attendant for international airlines, and today I'd like to tell my story about how I got into this profession, what challenges I faced, what were the positive aspects. I realized, probably, that according to my psychological qualities, that this is the kind of profession which assumes communication with people. But I also like to travel. Why not combine all that? And accidentally I got into a casting session. We talked for 5 minutes, and I get an email a month later, "Congratulations. We accept you." The training process itself, it was very difficult. Thankfully, all those 2 months went by, and I'm happy. I can fly now. That's great. I began to fly very hard for 16 hours a day. You have to get up at night, early in the morning, a completely different time zone. I would say pretty heavy passengers. Because, as my colleagues and I often thought, that the company had spoiled them a little bit. I had one incident. A woman complained because I didn't give her a big enough smile. I got called into the office for that. I was told off and reprimanded. We were intimidated by the fact that there was always some kind of checker flying around with us all the time. It's like a mystery shopper. He sees when you've done service they're not on time or delayed it. The salt has to stand to one side, the pepper shaker in the other. God forbid you get mixed up. The salary amount is in dollars. It started at $2,000 a month. Sometimes it was 3 or 3.5 at the most. If the senior was a conductor, $4,000. Compared to the pilots, of course, our salaries were small. Pilots were paid about $10,000 a month. That is, quite a lot. The amount of salary, it's very good. But you have to make sacrifices. First of all, your personal life. I mean, there's practically none. It's constant fatigue, because today you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, the next day you're waking up in a completely different time zone. In a completely different time zone at 5 p.m. Then you fly to the other side of the world and it's a different time zone. And so a lot of my colleagues were hooked on melatonin, on all these sleeping pills. Because otherwise it was impossible to fall asleep. From what I heard, it also affects the memory a lot. There's a little less oxygen than usual on the ground. Plus for this difference, the constant lack of sleep, the time zone difference. And I think your brain cells are dying off, and your memory really gets a lot worse. I'm a young girl, but I can feel it, just forgetting all sorts of normal things. I've even heard of flight attendants who have flown for more than 5 years, their testimony doesn't even count in court because their memory is unreliable. Plus health, blood pressure. My feet hurt a lot. I mean, the shoes, you put them on for work, you walk around the salon in them, then you just can't walk. My feet are so swollen. The shoes weren't very comfortable yet. Women's problems happened, too. But I got away with it because of my age. Those girls who flew longer, they had serious problems there. Social package was pretty good. In principle, it was a great advantage when choosing a job. It was fully paid for your housing, transportation, insurance, uniforms were provided, meals on board. Free round-trip tickets were provided once a year. Plus there were discounted tickets all the time. Before the passengers came on board, we have a lot of responsibilities. We literally check every seat to make sure there's nothing extra or dangerous in there. I found a couple of times that shouldn't be there. We get a lot of these inspections. They might plant it somewhere on the plane, you have to find it. And if you don't find it, the plane doesn't leave. You can tell right away people who don't fly a lot. And they demand everything at once. These are the ones to carry, serve 10 wines, cognacs, whatever, everything. Every flight attendant is just ready to bite already. Just some of them would go into the bathroom and cry. From fatigue, because they're still being yelled at. The senior flight attendant is yelling at them. You think, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to get to the hotel, open my laptop and write my resignation letter. Different nationalities have their own peculiarities. One African country, where the young people on the flight attendants go like this, kitty, kitty, kitty. Just like that. And at first you're like, what is that? And then you realize that's what they all do. It's normal for them. Or it's like, hey, sister. Hey, systems. Smacking sounds. The Arabs, they do that too. Smacking sounds, or they snap their fingers. Also unpleasant. But it's often the negative connotations that come from them. That you're supposed to be the servant here, and you're going to do everything. The Findos, they have a very specific behavior. The culture is completely alien to our culture. Passengers are trying to have sex in the bathroom. However, since we're very vigilant and we walk around the cabin all the time, we check everything. If we notice that someone is in the bathroom for a very long time, and we might knock, ask what's going on. It's possible that someone is there on a night flight, under a blanket and might not have noticed. But in the bathroom? Well, honestly, it's a very dirty place. There were flight attendants I know. We have a place to rest. Well, they managed to do something in there, quietly. Nobody burned them, but they forgot their safety equipment. They were somehow figured out and fired. Death on board, it happens, of course. There's a special medical service, you call them, they tell you what to do, how to save a life. But if, unfortunately, it can't be avoided in this situation, we try to find a place for the person who has already died. A place, preferably away from the passengers. But if it so happens that the flight is full, unfortunately, someone has to sit with the person who died. Yes, that's happened too. We have a passenger list where the passengers sit. It usually says at the bottom that the person already dead is in the coffin in the cargo hold. It's just better not to plan anything, it's never worked out. Once they give you a schedule, that's how you fly. It's very hard to develop yourself. And I wanted to learn something, but every time I sit down for a book, or it's some video class, I just realize I'm starting to fall asleep. You're not learning anything. And so it goes on for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. And you realize that you're never going to leave this job. That's often why people are so afraid of losing that job, and they go a little crazy, too. They become very rigid, very right. Of course, the good points are the opportunity to see the world, instead of saving up for, a trip to New Zealand for a few years or more. And then you arrive and think, and I didn't like it at all, why did I save up? And here, it's like a buffet, you see something, you have some idea of the country. Every time there's a new crew, you've got new passengers, you feel like you already know everything about the world. And then it turns out that you don't really know anything about it. You're living in your bubble, and you think you're fine as you are. Then you look, and there's so much variety. I wanted to be a part of this program, because when the pandemic is over, people are going to want to fly again. And a lot of people will want to try out as a flight attendant again. It's a really tough job, and you have to be prepared for that. I would like to pursue a career in aviation myself. By revealing my face, I'm giving it up for good. Some other employers might look at it and say, she always speaks so poorly of our airline. Why should we take one of those? But I just want to show the truth, as it really is.